to the latest episode.
Happy birthday to you. Happy
I
birthday to
Thank
you.
you, thank you. We are recording on my birthday, January 16th.
Yeah.
Even though this show is called Mondays in MMORPGs, we record the episodes traditionally on Thursdays. So you guys who are tuning in this will be tuning in on the 20th. But yes, today is my 40th birthday.
So I want to see a lot of happy birthday comments below. Thank you.
Yeah, we need lots of happy birthday comments to make me feel better. Today's taste session is Alma Mora, which is La Finca de las Moras, which is an Argentinian wine. This is a Pinot Grigio, so we're doing something simple today. Um, I am still stuffy, but I will say that today is the first day. Yesterday and today is like the first day in like 2 weeks that I've started to feel a little bit better. So I think whatever crud I got, it's really funny because we got back from our trip to the States. We got back, and the day we went to the supermarket on the 1st of January, all the cashiers were sick, and we got sick 2 days later. So whatever was going around, it wasn't the flu. It was just a cold. But then, like every time we went back, the cashiers were all still sick. And the funniest thing was like 4 days ago when we went to the supermarket. We had been to the supermarket 6 or 8 times. We go every 2 or 3 days, and we kept seeing the same cashiers still sick. And so when we went 4 days ago, we were like, I told Chris, I was pushing the cart. I was like, go ahead and go see if the cash registers that we know are sick are working. Because if they are, let's avoid them and go over to someone who we don't know. And so she's like, don't go to those two. Go over here to this one. And so we wheel our cart into that guy's aisle. And then as we get up to the cash register, there's people already behind us because it was, people are at the supermarket. But as we get up to the cash register, new guy who we've never seen before, and he just like, achoo,
Oh
achoo,
no.
achoo. And it's like, no. So it's whatever has been going around the city. Everybody's got it. The people that my wife goes to school with have all been with the sniffles and colds. But thankfully, I think it's finally passing. So hopefully today will be a um, less sniffly occasion, but I am still kind of stuffy. However, I have a glass of white wine. You have some tea. Cheers, salud,
Yes.
slanche. I forget how you say it in French.
Salty.
Sate. That's
Which
good.
is quite appropriate, speaking of your health.
Yes. So, all right. A few things before we jump into today's topic. I just read an article today. I guess Christopher Tolkien just passed away, who was J.R.R. Tolkien's son. Um, and he was basically since the 70s has been the guy behind publishing, the Silmarillion, all the Tales of Middle Earth and everything. Kind of unfortunate, at the same time, um, because he is as in my opinion as influential as his father was in making sure that the works of Tolkien continue to be published and keeping that IP as popular as it needed to be over the years, because without that we probably would have never had like the Lord of the Rings online MMORPG. We never would have had the movies. And even though I know that Christopher Tolkien didn't always agree, he didn't really like the movie adaptations. They were still brilliant movies. And eventually, they sold the rights to Amazon a couple of years ago to do this big new show that they're producing. So, just a quick shout out to that, RIP, rest in peace, because I know for many of us who are writers and or fantasy people, not only was J.R. Tolkien an influential person, so was his son. He was 95, so he had a good long existence. And I also found out on a gaming note that Cyberpunk 2077 has now been pushed back to September, which is sad because I pre-ordered it the day it came out and that was going to be my April. I was going to be busy with Saga, but like as soon as May hit, I was going to just dive in. So now it's not. However, the Final Fantasy VII remake is coming out on April 10th, so I will be diving into that as soon as we wrap up our stuff in April. So I'll do that in May, and then Last of Us 2 comes out I think the end of May. So I guess that'll be my summer gaming for the PS4. But since this is supposed to be a show about MMORPGs, let's spin it back around. You had a very good idea for a topic. What was it?
The relevance of in-game or raiding specifically in today's landscape
This
in
is all
MMORPGs.
right. This is going to be. I know that we're going to have different. I know that you and I are going to have a difference of opinion on this. I'm definitely interested to see where this conversation goes, and I'm interested to see what our comments are going to be from the
Mhm.
community on YouTube and Patreon. So I'll let you go first because I have a lot I could say about it, but I want to hear what you've got.
Yeah, I suddenly had this idea when I realized how difficult it was for me was the way I spend my life to get involved into World of Warcraft. And I'm
Now,
speaking
like
about
right now,
retail World of Warcraft, and I'm really not speaking about the game itself here. I'm not going to criticize the game at all. It's really a personal question related to how I can get involved into a video game. And
are
here's
you
the thing.
speaking like WoW as it affects your life now, like where you are at right now in game?
Yes,
Okay.
exactly. So I am streaming full time. I'm playing different MMORPG. The reason why I'm playing different MMORPGs both a personal question, but also to keep my stream interesting and varied and not being stuck into one single game. I think it's very important for me to explore different MMORPG and not be stuck with just being that one game streamer. Once again, this is personal. And then I started to lose my grab with World of Warcraft because I do not have enough time to invest into the game itself. I cannot afford to play it every night. Raiding to be experienced, in my opinion, in the way I want to experience, I need to have a guild of people I know and I care about to go through the hard time of learning the fights and have really this enjoyment of learning the fight together with people that I want to play with. And this is versus to pug or being carried by very good players. That's not really interesting me. I'm not really wanting to do that. I really have pleasure when I'm raiding, when I'm struggling with people I do care about. But to be with people that you care about, either you are the one that organized the guild and it take a lot of time, or you're not the one that organized the guild. You still have to spend quite some time to get to know those new people. And this is not something I can afford anymore. Therefore, writing is a lot less interesting to me. I'm not really getting involved into it. And then suddenly I find myself preferring games that offer me a lot of content that are not raiding content because I cannot fully enjoy raiding the way I do prefer to enjoy raiding.
Hmm. Okay.
And therefore, my question, my more theoretical question, is to see how the industry have evolved, how players have evolved. And a lot of players are in this situation where either they're playing too many different games, they are being distracted, they play maybe different platforms even. Is raiding, is this kind of structured end game that require quite some dedication still relevant today in this industry?
I'm gonna say yes, definitely, because I know for a fact that everything you just described to me is a personal, and I don't mean to say this in a negative way,
Mm-hmm.
but the issues affecting why you aren't rating are purely related to your personal situation of not wanting to play one game. I don't have that problem. I only play one MMORPG, and that's World of Warcraft Classic. So I play 5 nights a week. I was previously only playing 3 nights a week. I still play Tuesdays, Thursdays, and Saturdays with the high level content. We're currently running Lower Blackrock Spire and Upper Blackrock Spire and prepping and getting geared up to start raiding. We're also recruiting. And then on Monday and Friday nights, I play with my brother in the mid 30s, and we have some other characters in the guild who are mid 30s, and I think a couple people who are joining with alts. Um, Coming from the side of the fence that I come from, which is where I don't I'm not in your position. I am not a variety streamer. I am not a streamer at all. I play games for enjoyment and also research and development. But in the case of World of Warcraft, when I choose to pick an MMORPG, I typically only play one at a time, and I'll play 3 to 4 nights a week. Therefore, I'm putting enough time into the game to be able to do all of the content that that game has to offer. It definitely does require dedication if you want to do in game in any game, not just World of Warcraft. It doesn't matter what game you're talking about. If you're going to be
No, of
raiding,
course not.
it takes a lot of time and effort to coordinate 20 to 30 people. It takes time and effort to get materials ready, to make potions and everything else that you're going to need to have on the raids. It takes time and effort to recruit people. It takes time and effort to get those people together like a herd of cattle every week and to keep them going and to deal with the little bits of drama that pop up from time to time and people getting upset that they didn't get the piece of loot that they wanted. And there's always little things. Um, but I think that rating is very much relevant and as it's ever been. We also see, there are full-time raid guilds who are literally getting $1 million sponsorships every year and playing live on Twitch with World of Warcraft and other games. So it's very much rating is a thriving system. And if you look at most MMORPGs that are designed today, they are typically designed around the end game as opposed to the rest of the game, which I think is that's a design flaw, and we could talk about that later.
Mm,
But I think in what you're describing to me is um, the same argument that I've heard from casual gamers for the past 20 years. When someone doesn't have enough time to do the end game, they question whether or not the end game is relevant or valid. And I say absolutely, but I'm in that category of a person who chooses to stay with one game and only play that one game, and I don't go off and play other games. You're in a different position because you're a streamer, and as a variety streamer, you're compelled to play lots of different games because you need to be relevant and you need audience members like to see different things, especially when you're asking your community, hey, what do you want to see me playing this week? And you've got people that say, well, on Tuesday nights, we want to see you play Final Fantasy, and on Wednesday nights, we want to see you play Guild Wars, and on Thursday nights, we want to see you play World of Warcraft. So if you're going to go with what the community wants, which is what you kind of have to do as a streamer, then you might be in that situation of not being able to dedicate enough time to that one game um, in order to see the end game. Now, I think there's, from a design standpoint, you asked the question of whether or not it's still relevant. I think it is. However, I think it's also equally important that developers design content around players like you who are not going to play that one game and only that one game and who are going to be playing your game with like four other games at the same time. And for that, you need there to be content that's quick and easy, and it's accessible, and it's something that they can do when they only have maybe 2 to 4 hours a week to invest into your game. That, however, also begs the question, because I know this is something that you'll probably bring up in a minute. Is a game that you're playing only 4 hours a week in enough to justify paying a monthly subscription when you're only playing that game like 4 hours a week? And, from an enjoyment perspective, you might be getting enjoyment out of it, but when the game is meant to be played in, say, chunks of 25 hours a week or more, if you're going to be paying a monthly subscription, I don't know. But I definitely don't think it's irrelevant. I think it's just a matter of personal situations where people are at.
no, and I very much agree with you in the sense where I still think that the raiding community across various game is still striving, and I I do believe there is still space and demand for it. I also really realized that for me, at least, um, as much as I really like raiding, and I can assure you, this is something that I miss. But I enjoy it in very particular condition, and I do not enjoy it in other condition. Right now, I am trying to see how much I can enjoy World of Warcraft while not being completely invested in the game, if it's still possible. And like I say, and I really want to precise that it has nothing to do with the game itself, because I like it. I think it's good, and it is more a question: can I enjoy a game without being able to do the content that I preferred in the condition I preferred to do? Is there enough things on the side that can fulfill me? I know for sure that games like ESO or Guild Wars 2 are
Excuse me.
providing me the content that I will enjoy, because there's always new story. I don't need to, organize a group and get going, etc. I can play still with people and still be social, but I can do it in a more chill, relaxed way without really having to invest a lot of organization and bonding with people to be able to defeat something really difficult together. So for some game it's working, and for some other game it might be less working. And so I'm really wondering how that will play out in future.
Well, I also know that in the case of World of Warcraft, having not played retail really at all, but I know from reading and watching videos and so on and so forth that when it comes to the storyline, it's almost all tied to the end game. Like if you want to be following like the cinematics that they're releasing on social media, those characters that are in those cinematics are typically appearing primarily in the end game content. Like you're going to go up against the big baddie at the end of this expansion right now. And so everything you've been doing for the past 6 months with the latest expansion has been building up to this final battle. So if you actually want to partake in that storyline to its completion, you have to actually invest enough to be able to play in the end game. Now, correct me if I'm wrong, does not doesn't World of Warcraft have like a pickup raid feature in retail
Yeah,
that allows you to do
they
that
they do
casually?
have that. And for a very long years, I have been whining about these features, thinking that this is an insult for raiders. It's too easy because basically your the difficulty is so trivial that you can bypass the mechanics. You will not really see the mechanics of the boss. You can maybe guess them. Oh yeah, you will see the big splash they're doing, and you would need to move accordingly. But it's not really a big deal, and most of the time you will not even realize that there is a mechanic because it's too easy, and it's made and simplified so whoever random person can get into this pugging things, have two random tank, four kind of healers, and it's a mess. Basically it's a mess, but in the same time it's the only way for some people to get through the red, seeing the little cinematic cutscenes, see the atmosphere, and not miss out things. It was the first time in my gaming life that I had to go through the LFR, and not because I must gather some gear or something boring like this, but just to experience this red that I really wanted to do, and I really didn't have the occasion to do because of various reasons. I didn't have the occasion of getting involved into a group that were defeating those bosses in the normal version even. And so I went there and I did these things, and I just saw the landscape. I saw the boss, and I really had the feeling that, okay, I've pretended I've done this. And here it is, the death of Ashara, which has been one of the villains I wanted to meet the most. And it's leave a little taste of, yeah, I have
Bittersweet.
missed out.
Yeah,
Yeah, it was
bittersweet.
bittersweet. But I was also kind of grateful that there was this figure, because even to, it's a joke challenge wise, even to, this is not real reading, while I had the occasion of at least seeing the stuff.
That's a I know, and you and I have different opinions on this subject. I understand why a game like World of Warcraft has that feature. Um, a game like ours is going the opposite direction. We're going back to that old school mentality of if you don't have the people and you don't have the time and the dedication to put in to see the raid content, then you're not going to be able to complete all of the storylines.
Hmm.
And it's not that that's a bad thing per se. It's like real life. I don't get to participate in everything that happens on the global scale. I do what I can do in my own personal little corner of the world, and there's a saying that parents have: you get what you get, and you don't throw a fit. It's one of those things where you have to be satisfied with whatever your situation is in life, and the same can be said for games. I know some people might feel frustrated that they're not able to participate or see the end game, but I also like to think that the way we're designing our game, that it's not, we don't really have an, I hesitate to call it end game because it's something that so many other games rely upon, and we're actually
Hmm.
creating a world where like 90%, 85 to 90% of the content of the game is not raid content. So there's only going to be 10 or 15% of the game that's actually raid related. So most people will be able to experience, you know, the vast majority of content that our game has to offer. But there will be that 10 to 15% that's there for those people who want to put in the time and effort and dedication and only play our game. Our game is the only game they play, and they get together a raid team and they put in 40 hours a week and they treat it like a second job and they, put in the effort. Um, and then once they do that, they have the benefit of impacting the world because the way we're setting our world up, there are things that will happen once players have achieved certain things on a server. So even though some of it might be raid guilds, some of it might be the whole server community coming together and doing these world events, but there will be things that trigger unlocks in terms of content and moving the game from expansion 1 to expansion 2. And even though you might not necessarily participate in that explicitly because you don't have the time or whatever to go raiding, the world still moves on and you'll still be participating in that in the grand scope of things because you'll still be logged into the game and the game world will be changing around you. So it'll be like, oh, they killed the great dragon and the sun fell out of the sky, and it's kind of like I look at it the way um the end of the first Final Fantasy 14, like they basically the story reason for A Realm Reborn was the moon crashed in
Hmm.
to the planet and the servers went dark, and when they came back online it was a completely new environment. I love that from a story perspective because it's like, a small group of people did something and were able to participate in this, and then boom, servers go down, comes back for the expansion, and now it's a brand new world and everyone's in it and everyone's impacted by it, even though not necessarily everyone participated in what happened at the very end. So there's different ways to look at that.
Yeah, I think this is something that's really great. When you have something big that happen, maybe you cannot participate in the, top scale player way. And I'm going to get back into the Anchorage Open Gate event that for some
Which
technical reason was might be a bad idea, but they
I'm
had
really
really good
looking forward
aspect
to
to it.
that.
And in that event, I remember very well because I was a teeny player when it happened on my server, on one of the server I've been playing. But you still could do some quests. You could still gather materials and do the well, not offering, but gather stuff for the war effort. And you still had the feeling that you were participating to something big, even though you were a teeny player. And I think this is really great to have this long series of chain of events, and but different tasks can be given to different type of player. You could imagine certain player of middle range need to go in a certain dungeon to capture something and they need to complete that quest there, but they're like, middle range. You have the teeny players that can craft and gather stuff for something like the war effort, and then you have the end game players that will do the hardest content that really require their guild to put sweat, blood, and effort into it, and they accomplish the last things. But everyone has their role to participate, and just give really a feeling of belonging to a world, of belonging to a story, and of
Yeah.
being part of an epic saga.
That's something that's very important that what we're looking at doing is these world events. That I'm more interested in doing world events than I am static content because world
Mm-hmm.
events, even though static content is important in terms of
Mm-hmm.
progression to keep players, moving towards a goal, and therefore, it's one of the many reasons, one of the many carrots that you give them to want to keep logging back in. I think world events are great when you can have the entire community participate in it. And we've already planned out multiple things within the world that won't happen unless the server comes together and participates as a whole. It's going to require everybody working together to move the story forward at certain parts. It's something I'm very keen on exploring in greater detail. Um, the idea of you've touched on a few things, and I want to give some perspective to this. What we're doing right now in World of Warcraft Classic, this is the most casually I have ever attempted to do raiding before in my life. So previously, when I was raiding, I quit in 2009, I believe it was 2009, and there was a good basically from 1999 to 2001. I was playing kind of casually, but then from 2001 into 2009, I was a hardcore raider, and for 7 of those years, I was at the top end, top tier, and putting in like 120 hours a week when we were playing Vanguard and EverQuest 2, which is stupid. It's stupid when you think about it. But I had a partner who gamed with me, so literally it was go to work, and as soon as I came home from work, all we did outside of work and her school was just game. That's all we did.
Yeah.
Did not have social lives outside of that, and I was the guild leader, so it was like I was the raid tank and the guild leader, and I've been there, I've done that. Doing it this time around, this is an interesting anecdote maybe to this. So, in terms of Classic, I am a newbie to Classic. I have not played the game before, therefore, I don't have nostalgia. I've never done the content, so I don't have it memorized. It's all new to me. If I do read tutorials or if I do read a quest walkthrough, it's just to kind of help guide me to something that I can't find. For the most part, everybody that's in our guild are people who have already played the game before. Some people have not, but a few have. And if you look at the vast majority, I would estimate that 90% of the people who are playing World of Warcraft Classic are people who already played Warcraft when it launched. I think there's a very small percentage of people who are like me and never played it before. So, what most people did who were interested in raiding was they got in on day one at the end of September, and then by the end of October, they were already 60 and they'd already cleared Molten Core and everything else. And then they've just continued through phase two and etc. And they've had everything locked down. And these people play ridiculous amounts of hours. We had a guild that reached out to us recently and was asking us about a merger. And I was kind of curious why they were looking for a merger because, in the course of our discussions, basically the way we play is we've played pretty regularly Tuesdays, Thursdays, and Saturdays for since the server launched. I am the slowest leveler in the guild. I'm only 54. We have quite a few people who are. We have like a dozen people who are 60. We've recruited some new people who are mid 50s, and then we have some people who play only like once or twice a week who are still in their 30s. But if you want to count the regular players, I am the slowest. And the reason that I am the slowest out of the group of people who regularly play in our guild is because it's all new to me. So I'm not doing the streamlined methods. I'm
Mhm.
doing the things that I want to do, even if it's green quests, possibly gray quests, because I like the storylines and I'm exploring the lore and everything else. And I'm literally not giving a shit about this whole, BIS thing, best in slot. I'm just having fun playing the game. And so we've been recruiting in game for the past couple of weeks because we're at the point where we want more players in to do more dungeons and to start building up a raid force because we want to do, we've gotten our Onyxia attunement kind of up as far as we can push it without having a full raid force. We're doing, we've got 15, 20 people logging on a regular basis. Some nights we have more than that. And we're building up from that and having recruitment messages that we were putting out. We had somebody reach out to us and say that they were interested in a server merger, and I was in a guild merger, and I was like, well, I don't really like mergers first and foremost because I'm very protective of my community. Um, and I don't like when other people come in because you don't know how they're going to mesh personalities.
Mhm.
Are they going to agree with the loot rules and everything else? So I was like, let's talk because I could foresee this being something where maybe we spend a couple months getting to know each other and we do events together and as long as you abide by our raid loot rules and get along with our people and are nice people and fun to play with, then I'm more than happy to do a guild merger, but we're not going to just merge with you because. And then in the course of my conversation, it was like, he told me that they had 115 people in their guild. So I'm like, why are you looking for a merger when you already have 115 people in your guild? You have way more than enough to cover raids. And he's like, and we just and so these are the flags that started going off when he was we had a
Mm-hmm.
we had a Discord meeting. We were talking, and he was like, well, yeah, we moved here like 3 weeks ago. We're all on Herod with our mains. We've already had all that raid content cleared since October, and we raid during Tuesday mornings as soon as the server resets. We're the server first, getting all the raid kills on the server, and we're just bored. So we came here to do it all over again, and we're looking for another guild to partner with to kick ass for the alliance. And I'm like, okay, a few things. First and foremost, we don't give a shit about PvP, so kicking ass for the alliance doesn't matter to us. Like, we don't care about PvP.
Mm-hmm.
Second of all, the other thing he told me too is he's like, we've only been here 3 weeks and the majority of our people are already level 55 or greater. And I was like, so the second big warning sign for me is that you guys seem to play a lot more than we do because you're already with your core people at more than level 55 and they've only been playing for 3 weeks. That signifies to me that these people are playing around the clock, like, 60, 80 hours a week, just ridiculous amounts of hours. And third of all, I don't understand why you're looking to do a guild merger when you have 115 people. And as the conversation progressed, it basically what it came down to is they have a streamer in their guild, and this streamer has a pretty significant following on YouTube and Twitch, and his whole goal was being server first in whatever content is coming February 12th, Black Wing Lair or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
And
Yeah.
he has a resto or a holy paladin, resto paladin. I don't remember. He has a paladin, and he wanted to be main tank, and he wants to be streaming his guild's server first, world first takedown of that content. And so they're looking for as many people as possible to merge with so that they can have this domination raid force. And I was and they're still raiding on Herod actively on every time the server resets. And I was like, I don't think we're not going to work. Sorry, because A, we don't care about PvP. B, you guys are playing like 3 times, 4 times more than we're playing. And beyond that, we don't care about server firsts. We're literally just doing this to have fun. Server firsts mattered 15 years ago, bud. Like, it doesn't matter anymore. People have already done the content. It's been logged, it's been YouTubed, it's been Twitched, it's been done. Like, there's nothing new in what you're doing. So there's no reason for me to want to be involved in that kind of a situation. So, obviously the conversation went nowhere, but it raised a something that I know for a fact is a challenge in what we're doing is at the most we're going to raid is a couple times a week. And that's a turnoff for a lot of people because they want to be raiding. Like, if you're a raider, if you're someone who likes to raid, traditionally you want to be raiding 3, 4, 5 nights a week. Casual raiding has always had a negative um, reputation to it because it's like, wow, you're just casually raiding. You guys are.
But even too, it's so harder to organize. And I'm going to
Mhm.
jump here in the middle of the story because I think it's a good point, and it joined like my first comments related to this. Um, Casually raiding is very difficult. It's a lot harder than hardcore raiding.
Yep.
Obviously, not for the same reason, but as a casual player, it's very hard because, first of all, you need to have a lot more patience. You need more flexibility. When you're hardcore, you say, guys, you need to be that level with this type of gear by next week, and everyone will do it because everyone is driven by the same thirst of,
World
getting the
firsts.
content
Yep.
done. um, the casual raider, you will have people that, for some reason, cannot be hardcore, don't want to be
They
hardcore,
might only
but
play
still
once a month.
play a lot. You have some people that doesn't play a lot. Then you will have different type of quality of skills. You will have very good player that don't play a lot, so they are casual, but they still are very skillful, very knowledgeable, and they take care of their stuff. You will have the tourist. You will have the clumsy guy, the guy that gave his best, but even when he gave his best, he still stay in the reds and he still take all the damage. But you cannot be mad at him because he's really doing his best and you know it.
And he's a nice
I
guy,
say, yeah, voila. And I say, casual. the leader of a casual guild, and I've done that many times, it's really difficult because you have to balance so much different type of player. You need to um, calm down the guys that are a little bit impatient. I'm tired of this guy who's always dying, but he's nice. Yeah, but I'm tired. Shh, it's all right. Then you have to, oh, I'm too bad. I don't know if I deserve to be in the miss. Yes, it's fine. You're doing good. You're doing your best. It's all right. And you have to mix up all of that shit. And it take a lot of emotional, I would say, effort
It takes
and
a lot of time and effort.
investment to bring everyone together. And then twice a week working on getting your stuff done. And then you will have some people that leave that are tired of doing. Then you will have some people that, now they're too busy. They cannot come anymore. And you need to replace them. And that's why something like flexible raids for normal and heroic in World of Warcraft, I think it's a super brilliant idea because it gives this middle ground place. You have the LFR, the looking for group reds for the complete total tourist. You have the mythic for the hardcore player, and then you have heroic and normal, two different kind of difficulty. This is flexible, so it allows different type of composition, making easier to organize your raiding group depending of who is showing up that night.
Yeah, because I'll say that I was getting around in my roundabout way to saying what you just said, which is I'm finding it more challenging to recruit for a more casual raid force than I've ever found it in the past because typically when you recruit and when I was raiding 5 nights a week, it's like you're making a statement and you're out there saying, hey guys, we're the top 1, 2, 3 guild on the server. We're
Mm-hmm.
clearing this content. This is what we're working on. If you've got these flags, if you've got this gear and in these BIS items and this much haste and all this other stuff, then we're looking for 2 healers, 3 mages, and a rogue, and you'll get flooded with applications because there are lots of people that want to play at that tier. But what I've found from doing this at a more casual pace is that the people who do raid have already done it and they cleared it back in like November or October, November, December. And there are casual people, but for some odd reason they're afraid to commit to a schedule because that feels hardcore to them. And it's like it's not hardcore. It's just saying we're going to raid Thursdays and Saturdays because guess what? I'm a busy guy. I do a lot of different things in my life. I have a wife who doesn't game. I have a game studio that I'm running. I do podcasts. I do vodcasts. I watch Netflix. I go to the gym. I write books. I read books. I do lots of different things. So when I game, I schedule my sessions in advance to know that when I log on, I've got people to group with and I can make forward progress on these nights at these times so that I'm not wasting my time logging in looking for something to do. So there's this on the one hand, you've got people who won't join you because they've already cleared the content, and on the other hand, you've got people who they are relaxed casual players, but the moment that they hear that you have a schedule, they think that you're not casual and that suddenly they're going to have to adhere to a structure and it's like not really. We're just saying you can show up or not show up. This is our raid schedule. You don't have to
Mm-hmm.
come, but obviously there are rules and regulations in place to reward the people that participate more and so on and so forth. But I'm just in a roundabout way what I'm getting towards is that this kind of ties into what you were saying at the beginning of the episode. Since this is the first time I've tried to do a more casual relaxed raid guild than I've ever done previously, I found it to be far more challenging. And we haven't even started, really doing any hard content yet. Doing 10-man
Yeah.
content is not hard. Um, and doing quests and dungeons is not hard. But what I have noticed on at least on our server is like pickup raids seem to be a huge thing now, and that wasn't the case back in 2009 when I was still raiding. Like back in 2009 when I was still raiding full time, pickup raids were things to be laughed at. Like you didn't join pickup raids because you were going to fail. Like you needed to be in a raid guild that knew their shit and had good people. And now it's like there's every single night on our server, it's Molten Core pickup raids. Every single night there's a different guild hosting Molten Core. And it's just like
This is cool.
it is cool. It also shows me that the content isn't as hard as it used to be, and or people just know the strategy. Like I've literally seen people in chat going 45-minute Molten Core run, four
Mm-hmm.
four slots left, and I'm like, obviously they're doing speed runs now, and it's like I've never even done the content before. I don't want to join a pickup raid that's going to do a
Yeah.
speed run because then I don't get to enjoy the storyline. Like I want to see it, explore it, see every nook and cranny. And I realize I'm in the minority in this because I'm a new player to World of Warcraft. So that's been the other challenge for me in terms of getting to the end game of this particular game, in that I'm like the odd duck out because nobody gives a shit about the guy who hasn't played the game before, because they're like, you're going to slow us down. We don't want you in our groups. Like, we want to do a speed run. We don't want you off in the corner, clicking on
Mm.
that clickable because it's a cool lore item that's on the wall like a painting and you're trying to read the text when we need to be over here killing these 10 mobs because, we're on a mission. We got to get this done in 45 minutes so that we can reset the zone and do it again. So we'll
Yeah,
see.
it's complicated.
We'll see. I mean, I'm happy that at the very least, we're doing 10-man content, and we are recruiting new people slowly. We're getting like one or two new people every week, which is kind of nice. But at that pace, it's going to take us for frickin' ever to get 40 people in the guild who
Yeah.
can do a raid for us, because we've got we don't have enough for a raid force yet.
You
Not
will have to do your pickup group too, but as you will be the organizer of your
Yes,
pickup
we
group,
actually discussed this last week that we're going to
you
have to
will
be the ones to host it.
you will be imposing your own rule.
Hmm.
Pickup group for slow player.
Yeah, this is not a speed run. You know,
This is what I that's why I've always organized my own content also, so it could be done the way I want it. So the other people like me, because there is other people like me that like to take things easier, will want to join. I hate to be carried by super good players. So I don't like to join a group of kind and nice, very, very, very good players that will rush through the content and me, I will just following. We could say this is weird because this is a great way to, when you're a teeny person, to discover something. But I like to discover it myself. And my best pleasure is really when I struggle and work through it with people that I care about or I get to care
yes,
about by doing it
doing the content with
and,
the people you
and
love
discover it. That's the
is the
best.
best thing ever. I've said this before. Um, like when I used to have my travel blog, I told people, seeing a sunset is great when you're by yourself. It's better when you're with someone else. Um,
Yeah, and that kind of adventure is so good. It gives so much memory, which is why I'm a little bit sad to say that it's taken away from me or cannot really commit to something similar. And will I enjoy the lesser version of it?
yeah,
We'll
it's
see.
interesting too because I know in our previous Saga Lucimi gaming community events, um, the biggest we did was when we had a very specific expansion that we hit for EverQuest 2. We went in and we did the Runes of Kunark expansion, and the objective was we're gonna get everybody leveled up and we're gonna go do the mythical raids. And that's our objective, is specifically get to the level where we could start doing the mythical weapon content, and then we're gonna do all those weapons and all those raids for the guild. And that took us about 4 months. I think it was maybe like right around 3 months. By the fourth month, we had gotten everybody in the guild their weapons, and then people started dropping off because we had finished the objective and they didn't want to keep playing. Um, with EverQuest 2, the most recent time we did it, which was last March, when there was a new progression server that came out. We had 72 people that started, and within 3 weeks we were down to 30, because literally what happened was we had a whole bunch of people who went crazy and leveled all the way to 50 or whatever it was within like 3 weeks, and then there's nothing to do at the end, so they just quit playing. It was like there's only one raid in EverQuest 2 at the end of, it's you do Song of Ice and Fire, which is a long quest chain, and then you kill the raid boss at the end and you're done. Like, there's no, unless you're doing world bosses, there's nothing else to do in EverQuest 1. So by rushing to get to the end and getting your
Mm.
prismatic weapons, you've essentially, in 3 weeks, boom, you're done. And really, there's 6 to 8 months of content in that game if you take your time. People didn't want to take the time. And then what we saw was, we started off with like 78 people in the World of Warcraft guild. pre-launch. And so as soon as day one hit, we had almost 80 people in the guild within the first week. And by the end of the first month, we were already down to 50 because like 20 people had already bailed because we had a bunch of people who decided that they didn't want to play on a PvE server. They wanted to go to a PvP server because, oh, my my brother and his two friends play over on this PvP server. I'm going to go join them. All right, fair enough. Then we had a group of like 8 people who were like, no, we want to be 60 within 14 days and raiding by the end of October. So unfortunately, you guys are going to take too long. So no offense, we're a part of your community, but we're going to go join this other guild because we want to do the content. Fair, fine
Mhm.
enough. But what I also noticed is that suddenly had 50 people, and then over the next 6 to 8 weeks, all of the nostalgia players quit playing. And this is something we've talked. I think we've talked about this in a previous episode. That
Hmm.
like I think we talked about. I think I said in the I used the example that I used, the analogy that I used was sexual partners and how, you know, people are always looking for that next new thing. But the moment you've had it, you get bored with it and then, no big deal. And then you forget about it and you're off to the next thing. Um, that's how nostalgia players play games. They play these games for about 6 to 8 weeks and then they're done and they go off to the next game.
Yeah, they just
So,
need their emotional shoot,
right,
and that's about.
we were left with, half of what we started with. And then other people, we've had multiple players who like they only play like once a month, and unfortunately, that's not enough to be considered a kind of a valued member of the team, if that makes sense.
Hmm.
When we're in terms of talking about the people who we need to be raiding with, I need to know that these people are going to be playing 3 to 4 nights a week, and if not, that they're at least going to show up for the raid content. But if I don't, then you have to over. This is a big difference I'm finding between a casual raid guild and so the raid guild that I had previously that we ran with for about 7 years. We had 34 people. That's it. 34 people. Same people in the guild through EverQuest 2, Vanguard. We did Lord of the Rings online, but it was just these 34 people. And in 7 years, we only lost 2 people. The other 32, they played 5, 6 nights a week like clockwork for the entire time that I ran that guild, and we never needed to recruit more because the raids in EverQuest 2, for example, which was the primary place where we played, it was 24-man raids. So we had an excess. We had more people than we needed for the raids, and what we did is we just cycled out because not everybody could raid every single night. We had people who are like, well, my kids have a play tonight. We're gonna go to the play, or hey, my wife wants to go watch a movie tonight. Cool. We've got we've got an
Hmm.
extra eight. We've got an extra 8 to 10 people who we could pull in as reserves, and our reserves didn't care because everyone got to raid at least 2 to 3 times a week because we were raiding
Is
like
it
5 nights a week.
is
And
it
with a casual
something?
guild, you have to over recruit,
Yeah,
which
that's very true.
I think it's a downside because you can't be as intimately connected with people as you would be with a smaller community because it's like if I want to have 40 people showing up for the raids, then I really need to have like 80 people in the guild because half those people aren't going to show up regularly.
Yeah, but and even more, you may even
Yeah,
triple.
probably.
But is it still possible to do this type of guild
I'll let you know
again?
in a few months.
No, but I mean, like seriously, like the guild you described was 40 people, and you stick with those 40 people for 7 years.
I don't know.
I never
People play differently these days.
I never succeed to do that, even by in the time, and I would not imagine this as something possible at all. What I observe in my gaming world is people going and coming and then coming back and then going again, and it's almost impossible to do something on that scope for a very long time. I have been doing, and this is the last time I've been doing it, proper raiding in World of Warcraft, which is flexible. So all I need is at least 10%, which is not really demanding in comparison to Classic. And even though we did that for 6 months, I think I would say it was something like 6 months. Even into 6 months, I changed main tank several times. I had different
So,
healers.
if I
Even
can,
though this was kind of easy, just 2 nights a week, I
I'd
could
say my
not keep exactly the same people.
my insight into that would be, this is my perspective on that. Because I was the raid tank and the raid leader and the guild leader, it was easy for me to keep those people together because it was, because we were at the top and all of the people in our guild wanted to be at the top. It was very much a, we're all striving to be top 10 worldwide for EverQuest 2.
Yeah,
So our
maybe
our
that's the
objective
small
is to be like
difference.
the number 1, number 2 guild on the server. And so we're all motivated by that. We're all having fun together. We all get along. We all are really passionate about these games, EverQuest 2 and Vanguard. So it worked for us. But I will say this because if you recall, I went to France in October, and World of Warcraft Classic launched right at the end of September. So I only had like 4 or 5 days to play before I went off to Paris, and then I couldn't play for 2 weeks. And even though I know for a fact there was a huge disconnect because the guild leader wasn't in the guild playing every single night. So we had a good chunk of people who were like, well, and even though they knew that I went to France, there's this weird psychological thing that happens when the guild leader isn't logging in, people aren't as motivated to play. And
Yeah.
so they go off and do other things. And I also will know this because when I got back, I know for a fact that there was about half a dozen guild members who left because when I got back, I was splitting my time between leveling Renfail, my main tank, and I was at the time leveling a duo, my Ranger Druid duo during the days. So I would play Tuesday, Thursday, and Saturday nights because I had a static group. So my objective was I'm only going to play my main character with my static group on the nights that they play because I don't want to level beyond them. So
Mm-hmm.
when I'm not playing with them, I'm going to be playing my alts. And we had one guy in particular who's a long-term community member, and no offense to him whatsoever, but he actually made some comments in guild chat and in Discord and was a little. I don't want to say that he was upset. His commentary was basically he I wasn't leveling fast enough to be the raid tank for the guild. I was leveling alts when I should have been leveling my main, and he made comments multiple times in guild chat and in Discord. Well, why aren't you on your main right now? Why are you worried about your ranger and your druid? Why aren't you playing your dwarf? Why aren't you doing this? And shouldn't you be focused on this? And blah blah blah. And within about 2 weeks of me doing that, after I got back, he's like, "No offense, I'm gonna go ahead and leave and go somewhere else." And he went at the same time a bunch of other
Mm.
people went because I wasn't leveling fast enough for them. So there's something to be said for the way I play these days is not the way I used to play 10 years ago. So when I used to play, I had a partner game with me and I was all about the one character and that was it. Now, Chris does play with me, but only like once every couple weeks. She's not a big gamer, but she does it, when she feels like it and when she has free time. And so I have an alt that I play with her, and then I have an alt that I play with my brother, and then I have alts for me when I just don't want to be in a group with people. I just want me time. I want to sit here and maybe I'm not having a great day. Maybe I just want to have 30 minutes to go kill some shit. And I don't want to have a communicate. I don't want to log into Discord. I don't want to talk to people. I just want to log in and do some quests and have some me time. And I've learned that the way I play games these days, it's a lot more difficult to maintain that forward
Guild
focus.
cohesion. Yeah.
That what now?
Guild cohesion.
Guild cohesion. Yeah, it's basically the same thing. The forward momentum, cohesion, the intimacy, the direction, the focus, whatever. It's more challenging because people are like, well, you're not always on. You're only
Yep.
on like 3 or 4 nights a week. You're not always playing your dwarf. You're doing all these other things. You're not always leveling. You're off crafting. You're helping people with an alt here. You're doing this. And I'm like, yeah, but I'm doing what I like to do now. Like I'm having fun. I'm having as much fun now as I used to have. I'm just playing in a different way. I still play 25-ish, 30 hours a week. Um, but it's a little more divided now. But I have, my takeaway from that is the reason I was able to keep those people going for so long was because I played one character. I played 100 hours a week, and that's all I did. Like, so I was there.
Mm.
I was like, I'm not gonna joke. This is how our typical weekend would be. Weekends would be we would get up at 5:30 in the morning, and by 6 o'clock we would be logged into the game. We would play from 6 to noon. We would take a lunch break. We would come back at 1 o'clock. We would play till 5, take a dinner break, and then we would play from 6 until midnight. Then we'd go to sleep, do the same thing on Sunday. Then on Mondays, I'd go to work. but I'd be home by 4:30, 4:30. So by 5 o'clock we're logged in and we're playing 5 to midnight every single night. Monday through Friday, 5 to midnight, and then on the weekends the schedule that I just told you, and then sometimes I would
Yeah.
sneak in morning sessions too if I got up early, or if and then because the way I used to have my construction company, I would have downtime between projects where I might have a month, might be a week, might be 2 weeks, it might be a month between projects, and anytime that I had a break like that, I would literally play all day. I'd get up at 6 o'clock and play till midnight and just you know and I don't do that anymore. But that's how I
Uh,
was able to maintain that cohesiveness because when you're there all the time, somebody logs
yeah.
in, they're not bored because the moment you see somebody log in, you're like, "Oh, you over here, get in this group. We got shit to do." And doing it casually, you're letting people do their own thing. And so
Hmm.
sometimes people are like, "Well, I'm bored, so I'm going to log out." And when you're not letting them get bored and you're just forcibly taking them and saying, "Get there. Go
Yeah.
tank for that group." It's a little different these days.
This remind me how I used to play World of Warcraft for 6 years. It was my only game, and I was doing exactly what you described.
I loved the photo you posted
And
recently on Twitter, by the way.
oh yeah.
When you were in the hospital bed, you were talking about how, like, just before you had your son, you would like marathon a session.
Well, it was the release, the open beta of World of Warcraft in Europe in January 2005. So we had World of Warcraft later than America, but I have been expecting that game with almost as much impatience as I was expecting my son. So 3 days after the release of the beta, which of course I had played a lot and through the night, well, I had to go to the hospital and I was not in my best shape for several reasons, but also because I did play too much the game. And when I was in labor and in pain, and I didn't take the spine painkiller. I wanted to do it the true way. And I was like, oh, I need healing. And I was hearing this
Oh my
paladin spell in my
god!
so so that was it.
I'm sorry, my cough is coming out when I'm laughing like that. Oh, that's epic. I need healing. Somebody cast a heal over time on me. This sucks.
Yeah. So
Ah,
yeah. And now my son, the class is playing Paladin. I'm wondering if there's a correlation.
it could be.
Yeah, maybe.
So I will say that, at the end of the day, in relation to the topic at hand, I think that, rating is still very much alive and well, but it is very much dependent on your personal situation with time. I will say this, if Chris gamed, if that was her thing, like it is my thing, I would play so much more than I do. So I'm actually kind of happy that she doesn't because it keeps me out of this chair.
Grounded.
Right, and it
Yeah.
keeps me grounded and not because I'm not saying that the way I used to be is bad. Um, however, um, I I
You
like
cannot do
video.
that all your life,
No,
right?
you really should. Yeah, I don't think you should. There's something to be said for the guys like Ninja and etc. who that their whole livelihood is built around streaming and being a streamer and playing like 18. But I get really disturbed when I watch these streamers like, and I know you've done them as well. So I'm just gonna say this, no offense, but I get
No,
very
that's
disturbed
fine.
when I see streamers who are like doing an 18-hour session or a 24-hour session, and I'm like, why? I have no compelling desire to do that, and I don't see a reason for it.
Mm,
Because for me, my whole aspect, the way I view games is games are entertainment for me. Now they also are becoming my livelihood in the sense that I'm building a game. But even when I used to play like I used to play, I never had time for other things, and now I do lots of different things. There's lots of amazing entertainment available through like Netflix, Hulu, Amazon, all these streaming services. There's so many great games. Like think about it, 1999, 2004, we didn't have all of these handhelds and consoles and mobile games and all this other stuff. We didn't have Netflix, we didn't have streaming services. We just we had a very small selection. But now there's so much good entertainment out there, and I enjoy travel, I enjoy photography, I enjoy novels.
mm,
My wife
mm.
enjoys painting. She's wanting to learn how to play guitar. So it's like we have as an adult, I like having lots of different things to do. Um, and even on the days that I have off, um, I don't, when I was 24, up to 29, anytime I had a day off, all I did was play video games for like, 18 hours in a day. And now it's like if I have a day off, I'll definitely play more than I would on a normal day. I might put in like 6 or 8 hours if I have a new game and it's my day off. Like if there's a new PlayStation game, um, or something, and I have a day off, then I'm gonna put in 6 or 8 hours, but I'm not gonna put in 18. It's like I'm still gonna go watch a couple shows with my wife. I'm gonna go to the gym. I'm gonna go for a walk. I'm gonna go to the supermarket. I'm gonna listen to a podcast. I'm gonna read a few chapters of a book. I'm gonna do lots of things in a day, and I like doing that. And I don't even have kids, So if I had children, that would be another thing that I would be doing on top of this, So I like having that you know I like the fact that gaming is important to me and it's an important part of my life, but I only put in you know 25 to 30 hours a week into video games, and the rest of it I get to spend doing lots of other things.
Since I'm a streamer full time, I've never played as less as I do now. Um, it is it is very weird because when I reached that point where I was capable of living from it, and I was like so excited about it, I had this disconnection at some point, and I realized that I had to do more things. And I believe that the switch wasn't me, and this might be another subject. It's I lose the addiction, the need of being in a virtual world to feel good.
Yeah, we briefly touched on this, I think, in one of the recent episodes, but I think
Yeah, I think it might be an interesting
yeah,
subject,
I'm putting
speaking
it down
about
for next week.
escapism and addiction, because this is the shadow side of gaming, and we have all been through it,
We should
most of
definitely
us at
talk about that
least.
next week for sure, because I know there are the horror stories of people who have gone off the deep end and like died while they were playing because they just played for too long. And there are people, I do remember in EverQuest 1, probably when I was 21, probably around 2001, 2002, we had a guy we were playing with. He was part of a like static group. It was me, a paladin, a rogue, and this other guy who was playing a druid, and I had a ranger. And the guy who was playing the druid, like, he'd played with us for like 3 years, and then one day he just stopped playing, and our paladin was friends with him in real life. And I guess the guy he had become so obsessed with EverQuest that he had quit his job, um, quit going to class. He was a university student, quit his job, quit going to class, and just basically ended up destitute, like no money, got kicked out of the dormitories, got kicked out of college, ended up back at his parents' house, and in a very bad situation mentally and financially because he had just let his entire life like
Hmm.
just go to waste because of a video game. And even at my height, um, I never was disconnected from the real world, but I definitely was using it as a sense of escapism. So we should definitely talk about this next week because I think there's a lot of ranges of
Oh yes.
levels. There's levels of addiction, levels of escapism, etc. That's a really interesting topic. I could go on about that now, but
Yeah.
we're already over an hour, so we should wrap up
Yeah. Let's dive in next week,
next week.
guys, about addiction. Maybe you have a story to tell us that we can talk about, or a question. Maybe.
So this week's topic: what are your thoughts on the relevance? Do you think in-game is still something that you like to participate in? Yes, no, why? Um, why don't you like in-game? Why do you like in-game? I think that's a very good topic to discuss, especially I'm not going to lie, it's good to have more information at our disposal as we continue to develop Saga Leucemia because I know from my perspective, I'm very heavy handed when wanting to make sure that there's a portion of the storyline that stays locked away. But I also understand that it's very good to have lots of content for people to play in small chunks. So,
Do you consider yourself as a casual or as a hardcore player? What's your position related to that? And how do you enjoy gaming related to that position?
All good stuff. So thanks, everyone. Look forward to your comments, etc. Thanks for following along. Don't forget to hit the subscribe button here on YouTube, the bell icon to get more notifications. I don't know if I was pointing in the right direction or not. Also,
Doesn't matter.
supporting
Somewhere.
over at Patreon, and of course, links to all of Elloa's channels can be found in the description text below.
Thank you very much.
See you next week.
Bye bye. Take care of yourself. See you soon.